Italy, a land renowned not only for its glorious history, exquisite cuisine, and rich culture but also as the birthplace of some of the world's most notorious mafia organizations. Among them, two names stand out: the Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita, SCU. Both symbols of shadowy power. One operates as a global criminal network, while the other dominates its local territory. But which organization is truly stronger? And what sets them apart? Let's delve into this fascinating showdown right now. Italy, the cradle of culture and history, and home to some of the world's most notorious criminal organizations. When people think of the Italian Mafia, names like the Cosa Nostra in Sicily or the Camorra in Naples often come to mind. However, in the more remote corners of Italy, two other organizations hold equally fearsome power: the Ndrangheta of Calabria and the Sacra Corona Unita, SCU, of Puglia. These two groups not only differ in their methods of operation but also in how they build influence and dominate the lives of millions. One stands as a global mafia network, while the other is a clandestine force controlling its local region. But between these two powerhouses, which is truly more dangerous? Let's begin by examining their goals and areas of influence. Geographic scope. From local to global. The Ndrangheta, originating in Calabria, began its operations in one of Italy's poorest regions. However, from these humble beginnings, the Ndrangheta rapidly expanded beyond national borders. Today, its network spans Europe, North America, South America, Africa, and Australia. The Ndrangheta controls nearly all cocaine trafficking routes from South America to Europe, making it the most dominant player in the international drug trade. In Europe alone, their drug-related revenue is estimated at billions of euros annually. Meanwhile, the Sacra Corona Unita, SCU, headquartered in Puglia, the heel of Italy, primarily operates in southern Italy and neighboring areas like the Adriatic Sea. SCU controls smuggling routes for cigarettes, drugs, and human trafficking. Puglia's strategic location allows the SCU to foster strong ties with Balkan criminal organizations, particularly the Albanian Mafia. However, the SCU's reach is limited to Eastern Europe and the Mediterranean, falling short of the global network established by the Ndrangheta. Influence on communities and society. The influence of these two organizations is not confined to smuggling routes, it deeply impacts the daily lives of locals. The Ndrangheta, with its superior financial power, infiltrates economic and political sectors. In Calabria, the organization functions almost as a shadow government, where every critical decision must pass through mafia approval. A notable example is their control over public construction projects, using front companies to launder money and exert political influence. Many residents of Calabria live in fear, knowing that any opposition could have dire consequences. In contrast, the SCU asserts its power more visibly through violence. In Puglia, the organization imposes protection fees, controls black markets, and coerces local businesses to comply with its rules. The SCU is not just a criminal organization but also a destabilizing force within the community. However, its narrower scope of operations limits its ability to create the same level of societal influence as the Ndrangheta. Comparing their impact on communities. Despite their differences, both organizations have left profound marks on their respective regions. The Ndrangheta establishes control through financial power and political connections, projecting an invisible, yet terrifying image. Meanwhile, the SCU wields overt power through violence, forcing the people of Puglia to live in constant fear. Yet the Ndrangheta is a sophisticated machine operating silently. The SCU is a raging fire consuming everything within its reach. Every mafia organization relies on a tightly structured and sophisticated strategy to survive and thrive in the fiercely competitive underworld. The Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita, SCU, are no exceptions. However, their organizational structures and strategic execution define distinct identities for each group. Organizational structure. From closed family units to loose alliances, Ndrangheta is renowned for its tightly knit family-based structure, a feature that underpins its secrecy and resilience. Families, known as Ndrangheta, operate as independent cells yet remain interconnected through unwavering family loyalty. This means that even if one branch of the organization is dismantled, Others can continue functioning largely unaffected. This structure has enabled the Ndrangheta to withstand decades of intense crackdowns by authorities while safely expanding its network internationally. In contrast, the Sacra Corona Unita operates under a looser alliance of smaller groups. Founded in the 1980s to safeguard smuggling routes across the Adriatic Sea, the SCU's leadership structure is more fluid, with members frequently changing and aligning based on short-term interests. While this flexibility allows the SCU to adapt quickly to shifting circumstances, it also makes the organization more prone to fragmentation when leaders are arrested or betray the group. Criminal activities, from cocaine to black markets. The Ndrangheta is among the wealthiest criminal organizations globally, with its primary income derived from drug trafficking, particularly cocaine. The group controls nearly all cocaine transportation routes from South America to Europe, working directly with cartels like Sinaloa and Medellin. Additionally, the Ndrangheta engages in money laundering, extortion, and arms trafficking. They use front companies in construction, real estate, and hospitality to legitimize illicit profits and infiltrate the legitimate economy deeply. The SCU, meanwhile, focuses more on local activities like smuggling tobacco, drugs, and people. One of its primary revenue streams is tobacco smuggling across the Adriatic Sea, where it has built strong ties with the Albanian Mafia. Moreover, the SCU dominates black markets in Puglia, enforcing protection fees on local businesses. Despite its diversified criminal activities, the SCU cannot compete with the Ndrangheta on the international stage due to its lack of a widespread network. Levels of violence, discreet versus public. The Ndrangheta employs violence discreetly and with precision. They avoid drawing attention, opting instead for sophisticated assassinations to eliminate traitors or rivals. For instance, suspected traitors often disappear without a trace or are found in conditions that send a chilling message. This calculated secrecy makes the Ndrangheta a formidable opponent, difficult to dismantle. On the other hand, the SCU is not shy about using public violence to assert its dominance. Internal disputes and attacks on rivals are often carried out in broad daylight, sending a powerful message to both the community and potential adversaries. However, this openness also makes the SCU an easier target for law enforcement, leading to the capture of many high-ranking members during large-scale operations. Comparing strategies, stability versus flexibility. The Ndrangheta and SCU represent two entirely different approaches. The Ndrangheta's closed family structure ensures stability and longevity but lacks flexibility in forging new connections. Conversely, the SCU's loose alliance model allows for quick adaptation to changing circumstances but risks disintegration when critical links are severed. If the Ndrangheta is a well-oiled machine, with each part operating independently yet in harmony, the SCU is like a spider's web, where every thread is vital but also vulnerable to breaking. Violence and reputation, two factors that go hand in hand in the underworld. For the Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita, SCU, the way they wield violence and build their reputations reflects their essence and strategies. But what makes these organizations so fearsome in the eyes of the public? And which events have shaped their infamous legacies? Notorious violent events, when darkness unveils itself. The Ndrangheta, known for its secrecy, has left a chilling legacy with meticulously planned violent acts. One of the most shocking incidents was the Duisburg massacre in 2007 in Germany. 6 members of a Calabrian mafia family were gunned down outside an Italian restaurant during a long-standing internal feud. This gruesome event served as a stark reminder that, despite their discreet operations, the Ndrangheta is unafraid to use violence to settle internal disputes. In contrast, the Sacra Corona Unita frequently employs public violence to assert its dominance in southern Italy. A prominent example is the 1994 bombing in Lecce, where a series of explosions targeted local government buildings, causing widespread panic in the community. These acts served not only to intimidate rivals but also to send a bold message of defiance to the Italian authorities. Use of violence, subtle or brutal? The way the Ndrangheta and SCU use violence speaks volumes about their overarching strategies. The Ndrangheta treats violence as a tool for maintaining internal stability and protecting its global network. Their attacks are often targeted at specific individuals, such as rivals or traitors, and executed quietly to avoid drawing media or law enforcement attention. This calculated approach makes them unpredictable and nearly impenetrable. The SCU, on the other hand, uses violence as a reputation-building tool. Public attacks, bombings, and daytime killings are designed to send a strong message to the community and potential adversaries. However, this strategy also exposes the SCU to heightened scrutiny, making them a frequent target for law enforcement crackdowns. Reputation in the community and media. The Ndrangheta's reputation stems not only from violent acts but also from its unmatched ability to manipulate and control finances. International media often portrays them as one of the wealthiest criminal organizations globally, generating billions of euros annually through drug trafficking and other illicit activities. This financial power gives the Ndrangheta an aura of authority, making them a force few dare to confront directly. In contrast, the SCU builds its reputation on fear. Residents of Puglia live under constant threat from public violence and extortion activities. While the SCU lacks the Ndrangheta's international reach, it is synonymous with instability and danger locally. Italian media frequently covers bloody feuds and high-profile arrests of SCU leaders, further cementing their brutal image. Comparing levels of violence and reputation, the hidden killer versus the showy warrior. If the Ndrangheta is like a silent assassin, completing missions without leaving a trace, the SCU is akin to a fierce warrior, leaving its mark on the battlefield. One builds its reputation through wealth and sophisticated power, while the other relies on fear and overt violence. This contrast not only influences how these organizations are perceived but also shapes their survival and growth in the underworld. While the Ndrangheta ensures stability by avoiding attention, the SCU attracts heavy scrutiny from authorities due to its ostentatious actions. These violent events and their corresponding reputations are just one part of the larger picture. Behind every confrontation lie the sophisticated strategies that the Ndrangheta and SCU employed to counter each other and their rivals. So, how exactly do they do it? Let's dive into the next section to uncover their tactics. In the underworld, maintaining power requires more than wealth or reputation. It hinges on the ability to counter threats. For the Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita, SCU, dangers come not only from rival organizations but also from within their ranks. Each group has employed unique strategies to protect its territory, sustain influence, and combat adversaries. But who is the master strategist in this deadly game? Eternal rivals. Who is the greatest threat in the shadows? The Ndrangheta faces competition not only from other Italian mafia groups, such as the Cosa Nostra in Sicily or the Camorra in Naples, but also from international players like South American drug cartels. A prime example is their rivalry with Colombian criminal organizations over controlling cocaine trafficking routes from South America to Europe. However, the Ndrangheta has a critical advantage. Its family-based network ensures stability and secrecy, allowing it to maintain dominance. The SCU, on the other hand, primarily contends with smaller criminal groups in the Puglia region and Balkan mafias. Its greatest threat comes not from international rivals but from organizations like the Albanian Mafia, which seeks control of smuggling routes across the Adriatic Sea. Even local groups occasionally become adversaries, particularly when they refuse to follow the SCU's rules. Counter strategies. When violence becomes the common language, the Ndrangheta avoids direct confrontations and instead relies on infiltration tactics. Their strategy is not only to dominate markets but also to manipulate competitors from within. For example, Ndrangheta branches in South America frequently lure members from rival organizations by offering financial incentives or opportunities to expand their networks. Additionally, the Ndrangheta rarely engages in public violence, recognizing that silence is the best way to secure their power. The SCU, in contrast, takes a more direct approach. When Albanian mafias attempted to infiltrate Adriatic smuggling routes, the SCU launched a series of attacks to eliminate their rivals. These clashes not only sent a clear message that the SCU would not tolerate threats but also reinforced their dominance in the eyes of local communities. However, this public approach also makes the SCU an easier target for Italian law enforcement. Notable clashes, when power is challenged. While rare, there have been instances where the Ndrangheta and SCU directly clashed. One significant confrontation occurred in the 1990s, when the SCU attempted to expand into drug markets controlled by the Ndrangheta. This effort was swiftly quashed as the Ndrangheta orchestrated a series of targeted attacks against SCU members, forcing the latter to retreat to their stronghold in Puglia. In other battles, the Ndrangheta focused on countering international rivals, while the SCU dealt with challenges closer to home. For instance, the Albanian Mafia has repeatedly tried to take control of smuggling routes across the Adriatic, resulting in prolonged skirmishes with the SCU. These confrontations have shaped the dynamics between criminal organizations in the Mediterranean region. Limitations and lessons, when strategy shapes the future. Despite their strategies, both organizations face significant limitations. For the Ndrangheta, its closed family structure is a double-edged sword. While it preserves secrecy, it also makes the organization resistant to expansion or recruiting new members from outside. In some cases, internal family disputes have escalated into fierce conflicts, weakening the network. The SCU, with its looser structure, is more susceptible to internal betrayal. One of its greatest challenges is maintaining loyalty among smaller groups, especially in international alliances. On several occasions, allied groups have turned against the SCU when presented with better opportunities by other organizations. This has left the SCU vulnerable to fragmentation and the loss of control in key strategic areas. Ultimately, the Ndrangheta's calculated approach and global network provide long-term stability, while the SCU's aggressive tactics offer short-term dominance but expose weaknesses. Both serve as case studies in how strategy and structure determine survival in the shadowy underworld. The confrontations and strategies employed by the Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita (SCU) have defined their essence in the underworld. But what are their strengths, weaknesses, and the legacies they leave behind? What enables one organization to endure while the other fades away? Let's uncover the answers in this final section. In the criminal underworld, every organization has its strengths that enable it to endure, but also inherent weaknesses that may pose significant threats. For the Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita (SCU), their differences lie not only in their methods of operation but also in their essence and the legacies they leave behind. Let's delve deeper to understand why one continues to thrive while the other struggles to survive. Strengths, when secrecy and violence become keys to power. Ndrangheta, the fortress of secrecy. The Ndrangheta is nearly impenetrable. Its tightly knit family structure ensures absolute secrecy, making betrayal almost impossible. Moreover, the Ndrangheta doesn't solely rely on violence but focuses on long-term financial strategies. Controlling nearly all cocaine trafficking routes from South America to Europe provides them with enormous revenue, enabling them to extend their influence into legitimate economic sectors. SCU, the flexible enforcer. The SCU, in contrast, relies on flexibility and local control. Its loose structure allows it to quickly adapt to changing circumstances, especially in forming relationships with international criminal organizations like the Albanian Mafia or Balkan groups. The SCU is also notorious for public displays of violence, which help maintain internal discipline and assert dominance in their local territory. Weaknesses, cracks in the armor. Ndrangheta, bound by blood. The Ndrangheta's family-based structure is a double-edged sword. While it ensures loyalty, it also restricts expansion beyond familial ties, limiting the influx of fresh talent. In some instances, internal disputes among family branches have led to significant conflicts, weakening the organization from within. SCU, fragile alliances. For the SCU, its loose structure is its greatest vulnerability. When small groups operate independently, maintaining loyalty becomes a challenge, especially with competition from rival organizations. Internal betrayals have not only weakened the SCU but also allowed competitors to seize territory and influence. Symbolism, when identity tells the story. Ndrangheta, the invisible power. The Ndrangheta embodies secrecy and power. Unlike other criminal organizations, they avoid tattoos or hand signals. Their strength lies in their invisibility, a silent force operating in the shadows with enormous influence. Members often appear as legitimate businessmen, further enhancing their elusiveness. SCU, the Crown and Cross. In contrast, the SCU is steeped in symbolism. Their emblem, featuring a crown and cross, represents power and a connection to religious elements. SCU members often tattoo these symbols on their bodies as a sign of loyalty. However, these public markers make them easy targets for law enforcement and compromise their anonymity. Legacy. Who stands the test of time? Ndrangheta, the financial empire. With its financial control and global network, the Ndrangheta continues to expand its influence. Recent reports indicate that they have diversified beyond drug trafficking, deeply infiltrating legitimate sectors like construction, real estate, and banking. Despite international pressure, the Ndrangheta remains Italy's most powerful criminal organization. SCU. A declining force. The SCU, meanwhile, is losing ground. Its reliance on international alliances and a loose internal structure prevents it from sustaining power over time. While it remains active in Puglia, the SCU struggles to compete with larger organizations like the Ndrangheta or other international mafias. Comparison: sustainability versus flexibility. The Ndrangheta and SCU represent two distinct approaches to power. The former relies on sustainability and secrecy to build enduring influence, while the latter leans on flexibility and public violence to make a short-term impact. This fundamental difference shapes their destinies. The Ndrangheta thrives, maintaining its dominance through calculated, long-term strategies, while the SCU battles to hold onto its position, its weaknesses steadily eroding its power. Ultimately, the Ndrangheta's silent, methodical growth secures its place as a global criminal empire, while the SCU serves as a cautionary tale of how fleeting power can be when built on unstable foundations. Although vastly different, both Ndrangheta and Sacra Corona Unita have left indelible marks on the history of Italy's criminal underworld. One continues to expand its story on the international stage, while the other gradually fades into obscurity. What are your thoughts on the contrast between the Ndrangheta and the SCU? Which organization do you think has the more effective strategy? Let us know your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button to support this video. If you're eager to uncover more stories from the world of crime, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on our latest content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.